On Bike Rebellion this week, I spoke to Ron Miriello. Ron is a multimedia artist, a bicycle historian, and a storyteller. In this conversation, we talk about the history of bikes, the evolution of bicycle design and manufacturing, and the difference in mindset between European and U.S. motorists. I also got a tour of Ron's vintage Italian bicycle collection, which was a treat. I met with Ron on April 30th, 2025 in his studio in National City. Ron's story is an inspiring history of cycling's master craftsman. Enjoy. Welcome to Bike Rebellion. This week we're talking to Ron Miriello. Ron is an artist and what I would call a bicycle historian, and the way that I found Ron was basically asking the guys at my local bike shop who I should speak to for this project, and you were one of two people they mentioned as just a bike aficionado, a bike expert, somebody passionate about bicycles. Mm-hmm. So here we are. So Ron, cool. If you would, introduce yourself, tell us, what brings you to cycling and what you're passionate about.
Sure.
Just sort of introduce yourself.
I'm glad you guys are here, and
Thank you.
I really think it's cool what you're doing. To me, the bike's been kind of stitched through my whole life, and I grew up in Colorado. Went to college there at Colorado State. And before that, in junior high, the bike was my freedom machine. Mm-hmm. It was my way to get the hell out of the house, and I used it. So Colorado in the 60s was just kind of at the epicenter of European cycling coming to America, and I was right there. We have the mountains and a lot of great cyclists. And then the Coors Classic came in the 70s, and the Europeans came over here. And they brought their bikes with them, and I got to see them. I couldn't afford them, but I got to see these jewelry-like Italian-made frames that I thought one day I'm going to be part of that. So the bike to me has been a big kind of a thread that goes through everything I do, even the stuff I do today, even the things I make today. But the thing I wanted to accentuate is just it was a freedom machine. It was a way to get out and see the world, and it still is. And even for people who don't have a lot of money, or people who do, but the bike is usually like a first entry of mobility for cultures anywhere. And here it's seen as kind of, I'm 70, so I've seen it kind of evolve. We used to wave to each other when we rode in the 60s and 70s because nobody was out there. And if you're riding an Italian steel frame and somebody else was coming by, you acknowledged. That seems like an oddity now, but that's how interesting it was. But then I went to school in Italy in the mid-70s at Colorado State. I got a scholarship. And I got to see what the bike means in Europe. And it would be a little bit like you loving baseball, but you live in New Zealand. Then you come to America and you realize these guys are really into baseball. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the way it was for me going back to Italy and seeing bicycles. And I got to see older guys riding great bikes in packs through the Tuscan hills who were in my age, 60s and 70s, powering through the hills. I'm thinking, this is phenomenal. I got to see the Giro d'Italia one time. Mm-hmm. And then my dream, because my girlfriend in college had a Motobucon Super, all Campy Super record. To me, it was like it was so far out of reach and so beautiful. So when I was there as a student, I decided to look up some of these makers and go look at their shops. So I'm really interested in the making and the crafting of things. Yeah. So I chose to go to Cinelli, De Rosa, and Tomasini. Yep. All three of them are dead now, but I met with them personally in the mid-'80s. I sat down with Ugo De Rosa. Do you know De Rosa as a brand?
I've seen the bikes, but
well,
at a distance.
Yeah. which is kind of cool. We're kind of crashing together two generations of bike passion here.
Yeah.
So I went to see Ugo de Rosa. He made bikes for Eddie Merckx. He made bikes for so many phenomenal riders. And I went into his house where he made bikes in his first floor of his house. And Ugo de Rosa himself, got down on his hands and knees and had me hold a top tube through my legs and measured me. And as he was measuring me, I looked across his desk and there were black and white pictures of the who's who of cycling that he made bikes for. It was just like I was touching the hand of God. And he asked me, he had a check sheet and he said, what color do you want it? Do you want a triple T or Cinelli stem? Do you want me to pantograph the crown? Do you want me to sign it? Do you want me to tip? It's just like whatever I wanted. And this is a once in a life. I have no idea what it's going to cost, and I didn't care. I figured I'll find the money.
Right.
This is once in a lifetime.
It's total artistry, and what those guys were doing when they were doing it without the technology that we have now is absolutely amazing.
It's
to
humbling.
be honest,
It's very
it really
humbling.
is. It really is. So you started in Colorado, and you were a recreational cyclist. Say, when you went to Italy, did you start racing or anything like that? Because you
I had
definitely
a bike
had some
in college, so I'd use it to get around as transport.
Yeah.
I forget what it was, but I had it's just great because I could pick up inexpensive, cool bikes there.
Mhm.
And I used it. So in Colorado, I didn't have a car till I got out of college. I rode a bike the whole time.
Cool.
I got a speeding ticket on campus for going too fast. I was very proud of it. I rode on the club teams and we'd do the mountains and I'd run into these pro guys. There was a 7-Eleven team was just training out of Boulder and we'd run into them. So these were the guys that made it into the Tour de France and eventually broke through for the whole American squad, which we know of now. So cycling then was kind of a part of Colorado's birth. And it just became part of everything I've done. So it's how I travel. Now when I travel, I go on bike tours.
Yep.
So an interesting thing, just going to fast forwarding to today, I have a lot of friends who know I cycle a lot. They're older. They're intimidated by cycling because of a number of reasons. The strength you need, the security, we know that bike safety is kind of an issue. If you haven't grown up on the road, you're not comfortable in traffic.
Right.
Which is something I'd love to talk more about. But a lot of them have turned to e-bikes. And all of a sudden, a lot of my friends who've never ridden are into e-biking and travel with e-bikes.
Yeah.
So we did a tour of Croatia on a boat with 30 of us. So we all had bikes on the boat, and the boat would go to an island, and we'd get off and ride around this island, have lunch, sleep on the boat, and then they'd take us to another island, and we ride around. We did that for like 7 days,
God,
getting
that sounds
back
amazing.
into these old villages, and it's just like my thought was, I'm glad that I'm not on an e-bike because I'm going to stay on a non-e-bike as long as I can. But I'm glad that all my friends could come, I won't say with me, but could come too.
Yeah.
And that they consider themselves cyclists now.
Yeah, it definitely changes your horizons, no matter your level of physical fitness or physical fitness mostly, but experience also. The e-bike makes things possible for me that I couldn't do otherwise. You saw sort of what we roll with on a normal day, and to try to do that acoustically has changed things for sure for a lot of people, I think.
So the breakdown of cycling now has probably really shifted a lot. Road riding, I would think there was a period where it was the dominant part of the riding audience was road riding, non-electric.
Yep.
And now I think road riding is shrinking. You would know maybe better than me because of safety and security. And it's not just in the big cities, it's out in the country too. There's a lot of intimidation on the road, which is pretty scary.
Yeah.
I know how to hold my own, but I've been in some difficult situations. So people are shifting to off-road mountain biking or e-bike off-road.
Mm-hmm.
because they're trying to get off of traffic.
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm happy to talk more about, but how you share the road with an e-cargo bike is a big deal.
Well, I definitely, that's really a big part of you know, the mission is to obviously get to a point with our infrastructure where things are safe, which we are a long way from. But the being on a road without infrastructure, with people that are, you know, basically engaged with their technology, be it their phone or their car, and the sensors on the cars cannot be depended on to see you as a cyclist. I think there's a lot of different sort of factors that are working against us as cyclists on the road right now that are making it more and more dangerous. And you know, if you go to an intersection and sit at a stop sign, 3 out of 4 cars that go by, the people are going to either be looking at their phone on their stand, or it's going to be in their hand, and they're going to be text messaging. So there's 25% of drivers in
to be honest, you probably do it too.
I have, for sure. Yeah,
I mean,
we all
catch
do.
myself. I mean, I'm as guilty because it's
Yep.
It's part of how we're communicating, and the car is no longer a sanctuary.
Yep.
Remember when they used to ticket you if you're on your phone?
Yep.
They gave up on that.
Yeah, no longer. Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know where it's going, but the premise of your whole group is to try to come up with a collective understanding of where it might go, and also to stitch together people that are pocketed in doing this to understand how we're learning from each other, and also to build a camaraderie. Yeah. We're outnumbered by vehicles. Yeah. We always will be. And they're covered in metal and they have a lot more horsepower than we do. Perhaps. Now, I notice in Europe, the relationship's different. Yeah. And there's a respect for cycling there. Even on narrower roads, you're not seen as someone who's taking over their space, but you're seen as somebody who is part of a culture of cycling that they appreciate, they've seen, they want to respect. I mean, I live in a little village in Tuscany and there's narrow roads getting there. It's not uncommon to see 6, 8 cars all slowly waiting. Patiently. Yeah. Because there's a cyclist up there. Yeah. It's just.
Yeah. I spend as much time in Europe as I can right now. I have sort of cut back on my travel just for, you know, climate reasons. But when I do go there, the infrastructure that I see in, you know, Germany, France, Netherlands, Spain, really everywhere that I've been is significantly better than even the best city that I've been in the U.S. And a lot of that is it's not necessarily expensive. It's not necessarily you know, this huge investment that people
like Pershing
made.
Drive is.
Yeah, I mean, and they had
to do that, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, with the infrastructure here, we tend to really go overboard, I think, and do all this crazy engineering and crazy hardscaping, and like what they did on Pershing. You know, I forget what the dollar amount was on that, but I live right there, and I watched them do it and then rip it all up and then do it again.
Really?
You know, just, you know, it was contract construction companies that were doing the actual work, and there's, you know, there's just, the system is broken in so many ways, especially in San Diego, but we can, you know, talk a lot about that if we choose to go there. So before we go too deep down that rabbit hole though, like with your current relationship with the bicycle, are you doing recreational riding, or are you?
I'll ride to the office.
Okay. Do you live here local?
I live in Coronado, so I'll take the ferry over and ride.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't need the car.
Yeah.
Or even if I have it, I'm just going over the bridge.
That's fantastic.
So I've got way too many bikes.
Yeah.
I've got bike for every purpose, and every bike has a story, which I'll save that. But
do you have a cargo bike?
I just sold it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just sold it.
Cool.
Sold it to a Navy guy who wanted it for the island, so I sold it to him. So I use biking as it's my main form of exercise.
Yep.
So it's usually a longer ride on the weekends.
Yeah.
Maybe both days. I go a lot on my own just because I like the peace of mind I get. I don't use technology. I don't have earplugs or earbuds. I've got a Garmin, but I really don't care. I just happen to have it.
Yeah.
I want to be aware. I want to hear. And I work in a creative field. It's what I do. I'm an ideas person. And I think when I'm on the bike, my body is entertained and preoccupied. My awareness is there. And I believe I'm creating and solving and resolving and innovating with my mind when I'm on the bike.
Absolutely.
When I come back, I have a number of things I want to write down that I'm going to address. And that's not happening when I have a good work methodology here at my studio, but the bike is kind of a special zone. Mm-hmm. And I really cherish that.
I do that all the time. I do all of my best thinking when I'm riding my bike, which I probably ride for an hour to an hour and a half on a normal day, sometimes on the weekends more. But that's absolutely when I do all of my thinking. And I pull over probably twice a day and either write something down or put a note in my phone or whatever it is, where it's something that, and if you let it go, when you're deep in thought and your juices are really flowing, when you're sort of in this highly, just not highly agitated state, but highly aware state, I think, where everything's just working and your brain's doing the same thing. And, if those thoughts escape, they're gone a lot of the time.
Oh, I'm big in this conversation of ideation. And yeah. I talk to students about creativity a lot, and I keep journal books of all my ideas. And some of the things I'm doing now are ideas that I developed 10 years ago, these tables and other things. So I talk about recording the idea. But I also think about what makes me create. Where are these synapses, things coming from? Part of it is they're really undefinable, but I know the bicycle is one of my happy places for it. I may not be designing and thinking I've just resolved a design here. It's not that obvious. But I think the place that my mind goes when I'm riding, I think my physical body is completely sated and entertained and occupied. Mm-hmm. It's current, it's very present. I'm not zoning out.
Right.
But it allows this kind of place to come where ideas can float through, almost kind of like meditation, I guess.
Yeah.
It's very meditative. So I don't ever want to give that up, which is e-bikes are great.
Yeah.
To me, it's like going first class. I know if I ever fly first class, I ain't never going back to coach. And I don't want to even be tempted by it until I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against it. It's just that I'm a 50-year rider of street riding, and I'm not going to give it up until I have to. I can see it from here, by the way. Yeah.
It's definitely, I still ride an acoustic bike as much as I can, as much as I think is.
What'd you call it?
An acoustic, just so not electric.
Acoustic,
like a guitar.
Oh, okay. Never heard it referred to as acoustic.
Yeah, just
cool.
Acoustic
I got
bike.
it.
But it's not something I can do every day to go to work and back, and that. But it's
and it's hard to carry stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's a different mindset. In fact, that's interesting to talk about. We can talk about that too, but I started a project about 10 years ago with a friend of mine, Richard Opper, which was to open up a community-wide cycling center in Liberty Station.
Yep.
And we got control of the building for 50 years from the city. And then we started fundraising, which has been very, very difficult. And we've kind of put it on hold. I bring this up because it was our way of doing several things. One, it was getting these siloed groups of cyclists. They tend to be kind of club-driven, not club, but club-y. I am a cyclocross guy. I'm an Italian steel bike guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a off-road guy, BMX with 26. It's like we all pocket.
It's a lot of tribes.
And these tribes oftentimes don't mix,
Mm-hmm.
which is one cool thing about what you're doing. That place was the center for all of them, where there's cross-pollination going, where people are learning how to work on bikes, because that's a dying art, because bike shops don't have time to teach anymore. That's where I learned.
Okay.
It was to teach kids about bike safety, to have a push track there, to have clubs have a place to meet, to have filming on bicycles and everything to do. And I was going to put my collection of 90 bikes in there as kind of historical record of where we came from. So the vision is great. Fundraising is bare.
Mm-hmm.
And one thought I had was Bill Walton was a big champion of our idea, and he would sponsor us at his house, and we have fundraisers. He's a great guy who died later last year.
Yeah.
And a great cyclist, dude, really committed to cycling. Too bad he's not around. He'd be a great interview.
Yeah.
And I thought, with Bill and his support, I was thinking we should call it the Big Bike. And I wanted to get his bike. It just went online for sale, and I don't have patience to try to buy it.
He was what, about 6'10"?
Oh, this bike was made by Bill Holland, and it's massive, and it's all painted in Grateful Dead memorabilia. It's incredible, and it's huge. It looks like something a praying mantis would climb on.
Yeah.
That was going to be at the entry to this station, and photographs of cycling throughout San Diego history behind it. So it becomes more of a community center about cycling.
Yeah.
Forgetting about the silos, but more about what ties us together through the spinning wheel.
It's a great idea, and a common space like that, I think, it could be a really fantastic thing. There's different, I think. Have you heard of Bicycle Collective?
Yeah.
Where they're sort of, they're taking volunteers and they're also taking donations, but they'll teach you how to work on bikes. And if you show up, and especially if you volunteer a little bit of your time, that used to be in my neighborhood before they moved out to the Santee location. But I would go over there and donate what I had laying around my shop, and then just sit there and learn, learn how to work on bikes better.
Yeah, it just sparks another thought, which is the great unifying factor that a bike is. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you ride e-bikes, cargo bikes, or Italian steel street bikes, but everybody has an experience with a bike, usually. Impoverished young people, older senior citizens. It is kind of like food. Everyone needs to engage with it. Mm-hmm. So it's really a continuating thread that connects a lot of us together. Everybody has an experience, even if they just bought a bike for their son. Mm-hmm. And that's rare in our culture, that something has that through line. And I think there's a lot of power there. The other thing about cycling is it's not something that you can motorcycling is great, but the level of commitment you need on a motorcycle is different than a bike. I find that people who ride tend to be quality people. Now, this is a generalization that I feel a little less confident in saying now than I did 25 years ago. Yeah. But most of the people that I know who ride seriously or are committed to the bike have a certain countenance to them. They're not trying to take the easy road. They tend to be observant of what's around them. They are in a weak position in the culture, so they have to be observant of everyone else and ask for support and help. I just find it reinforces certain kind of pivotal characters about a person that are good, mm-hmm. are special. Now, I'm generalizing, but I still think it holds true. If you're a cyclist, I'm probably going to like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Or at least we'll have something we'll have a connection that's pretty strong. Right. We may vote different. We may have a lot of other things. Yeah,
and there are definitely people that are like, there are a lot of people who are vehicular cyclists, call it, where they put their bikes in their giant pickup truck and go out and do things that way. And then I think there's a bike commuter mindset too that is considerably different, perhaps. And we all do this for different reasons, and I think that's a note worth making.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. We do it for different reasons. I think I can't defend this, but I think there's a character through line along everyone who's doing it that is a unifying characteristic.
Yeah. Do you still ride a vintage bike like in your daily life, or do you ride a modern
combination of 3 or 4 bikes.
Okay.
I got my hands on a really great state-of-the-art Cervelo carbon that found me.
Still Italian.
It's actually not. It's
Okay.
an Italian name, but it's not made in Italy.
Right.
So I gave up my DeRosa carbon to go to this one. But it's a really great technology. And as I get older, I like the advantages I'm getting from a more streamlined 12-speed bike. But I ride that, and I ride a Tomasini titanium that I bought from Miriello Tomasini in Grosseto, Italy, that he built and he signed for me. Wow. It's a great bike, very unique. It's got a story to it. I mean, he and I, it's beautiful. And then I've got another bike that is a very odd Italian bike that I love that I rebuilt. So I buy frames in Italy from the makers usually, or from my friends, and I collect parts that are period correct. So all these bikes here did not come like this. They came as frames.
Built them from frames.
And I rebuild them. I'm kind of focused on bringing them back to fully functional bike for some reason.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff.
Oh, it's so cool. In fact, we'll walk through and look at these, but when you go to a place and just like you studied a bit about me before you came, well, I know these Italian bike makers. I started to collect a roster in Europe, particularly in Italy. Every town of any size would have its own bike maker.
Not just a bike shop.
A bike maker.
Yeah.
Because steel bikes are difficult to make, but they don't require a lot of investment. It requires talent and patience. So you would buy a bike from your local bike maker, just like you'd buy shoes from them, or bread.
Or a suit.
And I looked these guys up and I started cataloging them, and I ended up with 162 different guys, and there's more. Now, out of that 162, there might be 15 that are still making, and I will go find them.
And I mean, cycling has been around for, call it 200 and something years. I mean, if you're talking about the real, penny farthing and stuff like that. But this was a skill and a trade and a technology that was passed down through generations, right? It was not something that they had gone to school for.
You got it. So these, as a reference, I collect head tube badges. These are all, when I travel, this gives you an idea how many of these guys there were.
Wow.
And it didn't take a big investment. And they would learn usually from their father or the family, and they would take over the family business. So I just came back from a town in the south of Italy, in Puglia, in Lecce, because I was down there for a cycling tour.
Mm-hmm.
Before I left, I wanted to go down south another hour and see if I could find a guy who's 94. His name is Carlo Carla, and he was there in a suit, no tie. And he let me in. The shop was about as big as this. 94, sharp as a tack. And we spent 3 hours together. I videotaped these guys, and I speak Italian, and I know their history. So when you show up and you've got they're just like, how do you know me? How did you find me?
Mm-hmm.
It would be like Mickey Mantle still lived in Oklahoma and you drove out to see him. Right. You know, that's not quite correct because he was famous. Carlo Collà has never been famous. So I spent 3 hours with him, and he's got boxes of joinery that he's made and bikes. He said, I've made over 10,000 bikes in my life. I've been doing this since I was 14. His hands are like sausages.
Yeah.
And the knowledge this guy has, kind of sad to me, because when he dies, he takes all that experience with him. And he told me this. He said, he looked me in the eye and he said, My circle of life is closing. He did it just like that. Just blew me away. My circle of life is closing, and my two sons have no interest in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If you would like to buy everything that's here, I'd be honored. Wow. That's like talking about history of biking and what's lost. Well, yeah, the carbon stuff's great, but this guy, the world will be different when he's gone.
It's really sad, actually. Now that
I wish we could afford it, bring it here, but it's illogical.
Well, yeah, and
but I did buy a bike from him.
Yeah.
And he was thrilled. He was so happy. He's still in commerce. He still took home a check that day. Coolest guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, the skill that's been passed down over generations is really disappearing now, which I think is what is so great about what you're doing, where you're sort of preserving that history and putting it in a place and in a way that it's not just people who are just fanatical about the stuff that can get into it.
It's all about love.
It's really interesting.
It's all about love.
Yeah.
I mean, I there's certain things I do that are illogical that I don't ask myself why I'm doing it. I don't care. I just know that it means something to me, and I believe that it'll mean something to somebody else eventually. I just can't tell what it is.
Right.
Well, this conversation is an example. At least I get to present it to younger guys I get a lot of tattooed, black-hatted guys who wander in here interested in buying, or they know all the brand names. Cool brand names are out now. And they go, whoa, what's this stuff? And I'll explain to them, these are all unknown bike makers. They're not famous guys, but this is all handmade jewelry. And I'll explain to them what's going on in each bike and slow them down and focus them on the lug work and the intricate patterning and where they've been signed. And I can see them going, wow, I gotta do a little more work. I'm just buying brands.
Yeah.
You're buying a story, a relationship. And it's different. It's not their fault. It's just the way business is done now.
Yeah, exactly.
I represent, just to complete that, a bit of a backstory that is just a beautiful, beautiful story.
So you said you still ride for recreation and you still ride for transportation, obviously. What are like the underlying reasons? Is it just sort of the stress relief and getting in the zone? Are there other reasons that you see why you do it?
Sure. One reason is one I don't predict, and that's occasions like this happen. That because you're a bike cyclist, other people want to talk to you. Community is huge.
Yeah.
Last week, I drove out with a buddy of mine who I haven't spent enough time with to Borrego, put our bikes in the car, drove over the mountain down the other side, had breakfast in Borrego, and rode all around Borrego and out to the valleys. And it was just like, we looked at each other and said, man, it's right here. Let's do this more. And he and I had time together.
Yeah. And
that was just magic with a bike. It's just to me, it's community. It's okay. Here's another thing about a bike: the house I live in and the building I have are all because of the bike.
How so?
Because I cycle all the time, and on a bike, you guys know this. We know this city better than anybody who's driving a car.
That's very true.
You know back streets and how streets connect and how to get away from traffic and where the good lights are and where the potholes are because we're on a bike.
Yeah.
So why? I used to ride through downtown and come up through Barrio. I'm talking in 2015, 2005. And I'm thinking, this is cool. It was pretty beaten up.
Yeah.
But I could see its potential. I found that building because I was riding my bike. I found my house in Coronado because I used to take the ferry over and do the South Bay Loop. Mm-hmm. And I would cut back in some streets. And I'd always pass this house that I just thought was the best designed, coolest looking house I've ever seen. And then eventually I saw it show up, and a number of cool things happened that allowed me to have it.
Wow.
Because of the bike. I wouldn't
'Cause you
drive
had
over there. I'm
yeah,
not
you had
driving
ridden by
down
it.
those back streets. The bike to me is like a smart machine, man. I mean, and here's another cool. I'm here. We're in Barrio, and there's an old Olmo. I think that's an old Olmo I restored. I love bringing these old bikes and doing resto mod bikes restorations. If I have to drive to an appointment down in the city, I got to park and I find, sometimes if I'm late, I'll grab my car. But if I take my bike, it's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
I stop to see people. I learn about something new. I see a new shop. I have a friend that 5 or 6 things happen when I'm on my bike that never would happen in the car. And I'm not joking. It's like a magnet. So you asked, why do you ride?
I totally agree. I think it adds a richness to like your daily experience that you can't get really driving a car. You know, it's hard to explain, I think, but it does give you all of these sort of simple but pleasant experiences most of the time along the way, you know, wherever you're riding.
Well, creativity is about being open to what comes your way. You don't design something with a premeditated idea. It's a wandering. I talk to students about this. It's a methodology of wandering and being comfortable not knowing. And you're bumping into things and you're curating them as you go and you're drawing some conclusions. The bike does the same thing. You have a destination, but the things that, like you guys driving down here today, maybe no great event happened, but there were probably 25 little things that you could recount when you go to bed tonight that happened along the ride, as well as just getting here. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the destination on a bike, it's the path. It's like the metaphor of life.
Yeah.
We're so friggin' focused on making a lot of money and getting to the highest rung on the ladder in our culture. And we don't understand that taking the steps to get there is the deal. It's not the arrival. I have so many friends now who've arrived, could buy anything they want, and there's just a deep disenchantment still inside them.
Yeah.
And the bike forces you to kind of be more observant, to deal with the twists and turns that come your way, to slow down,
yeah, to
engage the unexpected along the way.
Yeah.
That to me, it's a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And let's see. So in your day-to-day life, are you like married or
divorced?
Okay.
One son.
Okay.
35.
And is he a cyclist? Like is it something that he's interested in at all?
No, it's really interesting. No, he's not mechanical. He's not interested in cars or bikes.
Okay.
My ex-wife would ride with me if it made me happy, but it was never a passion. I date now, and it's really interesting. It's rare that I find somebody who has a relationship to the bike that I have, especially older women.
Right.
My former girlfriend, her idea of cycling, she would do it with me. She was practicing, but if it didn't have a cup holder on the handlebar, it didn't count.
Right.
It's just a different way of biking.
Where I'm going is kind of with my girlfriend. She'll ride with me, but I kind of have to twist her arm most of the time to actually go out and do miles. So it's not a deal killer for relationships, or it's not necessarily something that the people around you are as enthralled with as you are.
Yeah.
And generationally, the nuts and bolts of bicycling and working on bikes is something that I know enjoy and are passionate about and understand deeply. Where I'm sort of a mechanical person, but I'm not sort of as bike centric. I work on boats, I work on electrical stuff and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in my 50s, and it's the sort of bike building and the mechanical aspect of it, I think, is something that maybe the younger generations aren't getting as much of as people in the older generations were, which, um, a lot of, and I think that's with the bike shed, or the bike, the project with the coalition that was, going to happen in Liberty Station. Just teaching people that is not the mechanical part of it is not something that seems to really be being passed on.
There's some thoughts on that. I agree. I've got a lot of friends my age who just ask me to fix their bike because I understand don't have a mechanical understanding of my car as I do of my bike. So I ask friends
Right.
to help me do that.
It's a simple machine.
It is. It's an elegant machine. And my observations are why is it not still relevant? I grew up in my dad's garage playing with tools, and those are my toys. So that doesn't happen.
Me too.
Number two, just like cars, bikes have gotten so much more complicated. So they are computerized vehicles now. It's things that everything I used to be able to do I can do everything on this bike, I can't do with this new Cervelo. So I'm reluctantly taking it to the shop to have these guys even change a tire, because these wheels are so friggin' expensive and they're tubeless. I want somebody else to handle it.
So the digitalization of it all, and the complexity has gotten to such a point.
I can't adjust a Di2 Shimano very
Right.
well because I really not understand how it works.
Yeah.
I was reluctant to even have a bike that had electronic, but I acquired one. So all of a sudden, hydraulic brakes. Bleeding hydraulic brakes is a pain.
Yeah.
It's messy. Do I use mineral oil or Shimano's oil? And that I've got a special order, and then have gloves. And it's like it's fine. It's fine. But if you just make the analogy to cars,
Mm-hmm.
mechanics used to wrench cars. Now they're dealing with computers and plugins to figure out what the remedies are. So it has gotten to be harder for people to learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that's happened. And people are busy and they buy satisfaction rather than make it.
Yeah.
So
where does that go?
The other thing too is bike shops. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I loved hanging around bike shops and shooting the breeze and learning from these guys while they're wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk into a bike shop now, the few that remain, they're in a place that's really high rent. They're paying salaries to labor guys in there. A lot of people asking stupid questions, eating up their day. The only way they're going to pay for that rent is to sell bikes and to do a lot of repairs. They're so focused on surviving, they don't have time to sit there and answer your questions.
Or teach, yeah.
There's not the shop mentality. I can't blame them.
Is that different in Europe, or is that a U.S. thing?
No,
or
it's the same.
Is it?
There's very few traditional bike shops. I know most of them.
I did a trip.
Now they're big supermarket places that
Mm-hmm.
are massive.
I did a trip in Europe last year, and because of in Paris, for example, there were all of the share bikes that were just everywhere, spread throughout the town, and the shared bikes had come in and basically put all of the bike shops out of business. To find a bike shop, a bike rental,
Never thought of that.
They're largely gone. I'm sure in Paris, if you know where to look, you can still find them. But a lot of those, bike shares,
you know what this sounds like? Bookstores.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, bookstores that remain are passionate people who have a niche and a great collection, who are doing it mostly out of love. But it's very much like a bookstore analogy when you think about it. And that used to be a place too for learning in the 60s, where cultures would be built there. It's where the coffee shop culture came from in San
Yeah,
Francisco. It's where the counterculture developed. It's where Haight-Ashbury came out of. And so much of it was through poetry in these bookstores. We're getting into a cultural discussion now of which bikes play a part. Its role is changed. There's a lot more cycling people now than ever in my lifetime. Unfortunately, there's so many different types.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of those bikes, I think, get bought on the internet and show up in a box and you know, are simplified to the point where people can hopefully put them together and be safe. But I mean, that's, things are changing.
Things are changing, and I don't like to sound like an old guy who laments the old days, but what I'm doing is I'm really interested in a broader subject here, Brian, which is what are we losing culturally now that we have so many ways to manufacture things through computerization. I started a book in the mid-'70s called Italy by Hand, where I interviewed makers of everyday products of highest quality level. Horse saddles, shoes, ceramics, accordions, cutlery. It's fantastic. And I have all the docs, kind of, you can see where the bikes came from. And, you know, that to me is, there's just like this guy, Carlo Carlao, when he dies, all those tools and all those 90 years of knowledge are gone. You might say, great, we don't need it anymore because I can make a bike from a 3D printer. Got it. I don't have an answer to this question, but I think it's a real conundrum. The fact that we have a really talented 22-year-old guy who's great at managing the 3D software with his fingers, who can then create a bike that is probably as good, if not better, than Carlo Carla's. I got it. But we're losing something in the process, and I can't figure out what it is. That whole stream of history is being replaced. It's falling off a cliff and being replaced by technical knowledge now. And I'm just wondering, in 10, 20 years, when all of this knowledge is no longer even accessible, it's dead. Are we going to look back and wonder what we've lost? This is more a metaphysical question than anything else, but I find it really fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
So let's get back to bikes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty heavy, actually, that we are, and I think that's happening in every industry where
boats.
Just everything is we're just leaning on tech so hard now, and when, you know, when the power goes out, when the, you know, various things could happen.
The ability to repair your own life, you've got to call people who have the expertise. You can't. You were so interdependent on these systems that it's a bit not frightening. It's just the dynamic of our way we relate to each other is very different, which gets back to bicycles. It's an analog, old-fashioned community maker. It's not dying, it's growing. So it is kind of an antidote to some of the things I was talking about. You may not know how to fix the tire. Got it. But it still, by its very nature, gets you out, exercise, fresh air, meeting other people, doing interesting things. Still does that beautifully. And I think it's fascinating. It's one of the harbingers of the future that I think is much more positive. And the other thing is, it hasn't changed that much. That's phenomenal to me. You know, the structure, the basic structure, no matter how much technology goes into it, we're into these minor edits.
Oh yeah,
it hasn't changed that much.
It's still just a two-wheel foot pusher, right?
Yeah. And I've got a bike over in the corner that's a 1939 Adler, which we can go over and look at. It came out of Germany just during World War II. And there are pictures of that bike being used by the Nazis with guns strapped to the top of it.
Wow.
But it's also a bike, that version I have is a women's bike. And the bike was the freedom machine for women because they could ride that with a skirt. and go out in public
Mm-hmm.
and create longer distances and do their own shopping. So that bike, that model, that era really was a women's freedom machine. They could go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't the car so much as the bike that allowed them to do that. The other thing that's cool about that bike is it's full of aluminum cast details. It's a brilliant machine. It's beautifully designed, just like the Germans would do. And it's got 20 features on there that you don't even see on bikes today.
That's
you can
pretty
adjust
cool.
the tension of the steering. It's really cool.
And it's funny because, there have been a couple of really sort of transformational inflection points where bicycle technologies changed relatively quickly, with safety bicycle and with different materials. But most of that has been relatively consistent, iterative change or just, just microscopic adjustments to the design.
Yeah.
And really in the past probably 20 or 30 years, the only thing that's really changed has been carbon fiber and the e-bike, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the battery technology, e-bike technology has been around for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the battery technology to make it reasonably light.
So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you think the biggest challenge to the growth of cycling is today?
Just safety. Here, I mean, in the U.S.,
I think it's
straight safety. Yeah.
I have a lot of people who've stopped riding,
Yep,
or afraid to start, or have had a bad experience and realize they're lucky they got out of it.
Yeah.
And are never going back. And so I feel like we're do you know Kevin Millard from La Jolla Bicycle?
I don't think so.
He's a long-term friend of mine. He's had a bike shop for 40 years. And he basically is on that bandwagon. Look, unless we can make cycling more safe, it's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I'm being overly dramatic. Or it's just going to shift to mountain and off-road. Because safety is far and away, and we're not doing a good job of training or enlightening people about safety. And that's his thought.
Oh, I totally agree. And the infrastructure that you've been involved in the Bike Coalition, and I'm sure you've at least at some level been in keeping track of SANDAG and what the city does with bicycle infrastructure. And it takes 15 years to get a bike lane done for some reason. I still struggle to figure all of that out. They can do it quickly when it's when there's public outcry and blood on the street. Yeah. Right. But that seems to be the only thing that.
So have you had this happen? I have a lot of friends who don't cycle and know I do. So I unwillingly am holding the banner of all things good for cycling.
Yeah.
And I get this question. They spent all that money to put that bike lane up and nobody's on it. All they've done is taken away my parking and made the street narrower, and it's not getting used. What do you think? What are you thinking? Now, I don't have an answer for that, although I think what SANDAG and future planners of the city are trying to do is shift. And right now it looks pretty awkward that all that real estate's been dedicated to the bike and it's getting very little use. But how else do you get people out of the car and make the shift? I think hopefully in the years to come, it'll be increasingly used, which is kind of what you guys partially are helping lubricate that conversation. But I don't really have a good answer for that question. I almost feel a bit guilty. Well, especially I think on 30th, there's certain ways where it's done on 5th, for example. It's pretty cumbersome. I don't want to get into traffic lanes, and it's not my expertise. But it's ruined the flow for a lot of people, and they don't really see the benefit coming back in terms of reduced traffic or more people using bikes.
I rode on 5th before they did that bike lane project, and I ride on 5th occasionally still. And when they started tearing that project up, it was it was 2 lanes of traffic with delineators, with basically, posts going up to protect
Right.
the bicycle lane, the existing bicycle lane. Surface was actually pretty good. And what they did was they took about 20 feet of the space, and they built a 7.5 foot wide bike lane, one direction, and then about 4 feet of a sidewalk or curb in the middle of the street that was just wasted space, to be very honest. And they built some parking back into that, and just basically redesigned the street that way. And had they actually used 12 feet of that, it would have been a usable bike lane. Because right now, if you're going up Fifth Avenue, and you're behind a slower cyclist, it's actually too narrow to do safe passes.
Is it both directions on one path?
No, it's fourth is going downhill, fifth is going uphill.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be a better way to do it, but we're in an interesting time where we're trying to get people to appreciate and make our streets safer for biking. Yet there's forces working against it as well, with safety being one of them.
Well, we need to build capacity is the way I see it. If we don't build capacity, if we build these little, a single bike lane between uptown and downtown, where we want thousands and thousands of people to cycle between every day, to and from work, to and from whatever events, are happening in their lives. We need to build capacity if we want that to actually work, and we're not doing that. And they're spending a lot of money on concrete when that's not what we really need. We need, whether it's a curb you need to build to just keep traffic out of the bike lane, or green paint works in some cases. It's nice to have a protected lane, but the just building all the hardscape and spending the millions of dollars on making this all pretty and beautiful is wasted money.
So I bet all of us here who ride know where the danger zones are in town, the intersections where you don't want to be on a bike, that have green pathways that lead you into traffic. It's really scary. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 of them and there was just no way for them to figure out how to get the path across an entry to the freeway, for example.
There's
if you're an unstable cyclist and you encounter one of those, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I call those pinch points where there's this beautiful infrastructure that leads you into a deadly situation. The bottom of the bike lane that runs along 15 going down to Mission Valley is another one where they did this beautiful bike lane, and it's really actually dangerous if you've ever ridden it, because it is a 2-way bike lane, and there's people coming down there at 35 miles an hour, and it's very it's not straight. There's a couple of places to duck out. The surface. The actual surface is not great, but then where it puts you into Mission Valley, once you're at the bottom of the hill, you're on your own, and it's a 45 mile an hour road. It's dark. There's not bike lanes. There's not delineators. There's just nothing there. So to ride from uptown to the new SDSU stadium down there is a deadly proposition.
So what's your favorite ride in town? When you're on a cargo bike, so it might be different.
I'll tell you, man, you can't beat my commute. I ride from North Park through Balboa Park. I go down, I ride down Harbor Drive, and that's my commute. And I ride around
to Shelter Island. Shelter?
Yeah, Shelter.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and then we work off of our bikes all day, so it's
really?
we're going from Shelter Island to Harbor Island. Sometimes we go downtown.
What do you do? Take your tools with you?
Yeah, that's what those boxes are for. That's why I made those.
You can get everything in there.
Yeah, yeah. We carry 100, 120 pounds of tools, and then we have room where we bring our parts, our spools of wire, our
That's very cool.
It's pretty interesting.
Mine's probably Cabrillo.
Okay.
Going up to Cabrillo Monument, and just there's not a lot of traffic. And then when you get up there, the reward is huge. I love going down tidelands off the backside down to the tide pools.
Yeah,
it's like
beautiful.
1920s California down there.
It is really
Just
beautiful.
And I scream every time I go down there. I've got a tradition where I just yell out into the wind. Just like, man, this is like life personified right now.
The ride back up is a different story.
Well, that's why we go down. Yeah. So that to me is it's like gorgeous. And I've had so many epic places I've gone on a bike that I never would have. There's another. We're not trying to sell each other on the power of the bike, but I have these rides that I've done through places that I appreciate so much more because I'm on the bike. And I'm looking for more of them. I'm going to Italy in a week.
Yeah, and you've seen like you're traveled and you've seen the what a bicycle city looks like. You know, I've seen that too. And San Diego has the potential to be the best bicycle city in the world.
I don't think it has the mentality though.
It doesn't.
It has the structure, it has the location, it has the atmosphere, it has so much.
It has the geography. I mean, just everything about it is perfect except for the infrastructure.
And the mentality. I just feel like there's a resistance. I don't want to.
No, let it rip.
Grown.
Let it rip.
That's grown. I mean, I'm fearful of certain types of vehicles that I see. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. I mean, you see a certain type of vehicle, and I just kind of assume what that driver is. I feel like vehicles talk to me now. It's the best way to say it. Even in my own car, I see people driving closer, making a statement.
Yeah. Or when they pass you and you're in the bike lane, they'll come into the bike lane in front of you.
This isn't even on a bike. Yeah. This is even a car. But
yeah.
I don't want to grouse here, but it's back to the safety thing. I don't feel like it's going in a positive direction. I feel like the ownership of the road by a four-tire vehicle is being reinstated. And then it also affects where you ride in the community. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave it at that. But if you aren't confident about holding the road and knowing how to handle a blow-by driver and you're squeamish,
you're right.
You're in trouble. And you're talking about experienced riders here who will still, the pleasure is so much higher that they're willing to put up with that static. But that's a gap. You know, not everyone wants to do that.
Yeah.
But I just have noticed an aggression on the road recently, I'll say in the last year, that concerns me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about. We'll talk about anything in cycling, but that's definitely something I see.
No, I see that too. And there's that. There's people and you know, you can generalize in terms of types of vehicles that are perhaps more commonly, you know, that guy than others, you know, and whether it's the race car with the loud exhaust pipes or the jacked up pickup truck. But, you know, in my day-to-day riding, what I find is that the Uber drivers and the especially the food delivery drivers who are parked in the bike lane, you know, constantly, there's not enforcement, and you know, there's no enforcement of people parking in the bike lanes, number one, but there's also, like, for these aggressive drivers, for the guys with the race cars that they drive on the road, for the guy with the you know, pickup truck with 44-inch tires, you know, you can go to the police and say, hey, listen, that guy ran me off the road just now. I have a video of it, and the cops still don't want to even do anything about it. There's absolutely no enforcement for cyclists, and it's pathetic.
Yeah. So we're very vulnerable population.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can ask me anything you want. I want to tell you about a few of these bikes too. But,
yeah.
But again,
well, let's do that. Are we?
You need to do a battery swap.
Okay. Okay.
But
let's do it.
It's more stories about cool guys in Italy.
No, that's fantastic, man. Okay. That's
because I know every single guy. That's who on these bikes. They're not like acquisitions to fill my. Like there's. It's so amazing. I'm going back over now.
It's legacy there, right?
For 5 weeks to see not bike guys, but just all these people. I have an art show that's opening in Tuscany in the 30th that I'm bringing back and setting up. But it's just like this community, particularly bikes, to me have been like a unifying factor of a lot of my relationships there. A lot of people aren't riding, but they know I do. And it's a way that I'm showing, they almost see it as a way to meet that I'm respecting their culture. So it'd be like a guy coming over here who wants to surf. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Surf
I want to
culture.
learn your culture.
That's a good analogy.
So it's gotten me deep into Italy in a beautiful way. So I'm going back this time, and I go to the Eroica. Do you know about that event?
No.
Are we on? Yeah. Again, it makes, so every year in October, in a town called Gaiole in Chianti, which is a Chianti village in the middle of Tuscany, everyone who's into steel bikes around the world shows up. And it's a 3-day event. It is just the coolest thing. And I know all the guys. I show up every time. Well, I've been there 4 or 5 times. And you have to have a pre-87 bike, which means you still have toe clips. And there are 3 different lengths. One, the earliest morning guys, these guys leave in the dark with helmets with lights on them, and they don't come back till the dark. They're doing 130 miles on these bikes on what's called white roads. These are old granite roads. Not all of them are 130 miles, but they are doing some amazing, phenomenal riding. And it's an homage to what cycling used to be. It's wool jerseys. That's where these guys come from. I buy them. I remake them.
Is it a race or is it?
It's not officially a race. It's
Okay.
more of a rally,
Tour.
but
Okay.
people take it super seriously. I don't do the 130. I do the 60.
Yeah.
And you're going through the most idyllic back countryside where guys like Bartoli and Coppi used to train on bikes that they used to ride. And you get an idea. And the director's name is Giancarlo Brocci. And he started this on a whim, saying, you know, cycling has gotten so computerized and so professional and so smooth. I want us to go back to this time when it was really a labor of love and you really exhausted yourself, because when you're exhausted, food tastes better and life is sweeter and you appreciate things more. So he has this kind of romantic take. Well, it just took off. I have videotape of us out there. It's just the coolest thing. You're driving through the most beautiful countryside ever in Tuscany on these beautiful bikes that people are bringing from around the world. And then there's a market of all these guys selling stuff from the period. Just killer. And the food is great. I mean, it's experience of a lifetime. And that's where sometimes I'll pick up bikes there.
Okay.
And we all have different, don't get me started. That's where I get a lot of this stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's do our battery swap and then we'll
do Eroica.
Do a little tour.
Like this Mino Denti is a great bike. It's got Rovai single spoke wheels on it. It's really great wheels. And this guy said, hey, I saw your collection. I know you appreciate bikes. This was my dad's racing bike. I don't know anything about bikes, but I don't want to sell it to somebody who's going to take it apart and sell the parts. So he brought it down here, and he's thrilled that it's in good hands. This bike is the same one. This is a Cinelli that was raced by a guy, his dad. It's a beautiful bike. Yeah. This is actually probably the most well-known bike I have. He said it's a Model B, and he feels better knowing it's here instead of going out, because the memory stays, the bike stays together. This bike is really a cool story. This is a guy named Mario Martini from Pistoia. Pistoia is about an hour north of Florence. And I drove to Pistoia and I knocked on his door and he opened the front door and he had a green jumpsuit on. He was 91. And what are you doing here, young man? I said, well, are you Mario Martini? He said, yeah. I said, I know you made bikes for the Giro d'Italia teams. I said, oh, okay, come on in. So we sat in the shop and I spent hours with the guy, took video, sweetest guy. And I said, Mario, is there a bike you want to sell? No, nothing's for sale. And that was it. We had a great time. He gave me some cool things. A couple years later, I'm on the internet looking for bikes in Italy and I see a Martini. And I click on it and I said, could this be Mario Martini? Yes, he's my neighbor. He's 94. I said, here's a picture of me and Mario. See if he remembers. I had lunch with him yesterday. He remembers you. He started crying when he saw the picture. He misses being in the shop. He wants you to have the bike, and he wants to know if he can put some of his old racing jerseys in there with him. I mean, this guy's giving me his history.
Wow.
That's Mario Martini's racing jerseys, probably from the 50s.
And just to know that it'll be taken care of and taken seriously. That's really cool.
And it arrived 2 weeks later with a picture of him holding it in his house. And almost like a thank you. He dies later that year. Okay, he's 93. Doesn't end there. I have a story on my website because it was it's called Finding Mario. And I took video and photographs. These guys are special dudes. His grandson calls me up and says, my grandfather died. We're going to have a memorial. Can we use your video and photographs because they're the best we have? I said, I'd be honored. He said, can you come to the memorial because we'd like to take you to dinner? And I said, well, I can't get over there that quick. He said, well, next time you come, we'd like to take you to dinner. So 6 months later, I went back to Pistoia. They took me out to dinner. I was the guest of honor at the end of the table, and they all had this dinner for me. Then his grandson comes up to me, Filippo, we're friends now. He's probably 28. He said, I want to do what you're doing. I want to collect my grandfather's bikes. So every time he finds a Martini in Italy, he takes a picture and sends it to me. Okay, what's the meaning of this story? It's not about the bike. It's about the stories that are collected as a symbol of the bike. And when the reverence you have for these things, people appreciate that you appreciate their life. It's beautiful stuff. Yeah. So each one, this one down here, and then I'll stop because you get me started. This is Toto Canatella from Palermo. I go to Palermo every year, and I stop in. This is a great old bike shop. Massimo runs it. In fact, I'll see him in a couple weeks. And I said, Massimo, one of these years I'm going to buy a bike for you. And he said, come here. So we went to the back of the shop. He said, that's the bike I want you to have. Not a bike I would have chosen particularly. I said, why that bike? Here comes the story again. He said, I was in medical school, and my father, Toto, owned the bike shop. He had a heart attack. I came in to take over the shop. This bike was half finished. I did the other half and finished it. This is the bridge bike in our family, and I want you to have it in California. So it was like the symbol of his dad and him's relationship. And he said, and I've been in this bike shop now for 34 years. He never went back to med school. So it's beautiful stuff. So I'll take a picture of this every so often, send it to him. And just the fact that it's in California being seen by you guys and appreciated, and the story of his dad gets retold, it's beautiful. That's the cool stuff, man. Each one of these has like a story like that. Yeah.
So cool. So Ron, we've covered a lot of ground, and thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous with that. So how do we get more people, do you think, on bikes for transportation? What if you had one sort of little gem of wisdom, how do we make that happen?
My first reaction is I think it's one person at a time. I think it's having the experience of it that is the big convincer. I don't think it's an ad campaign or a force, but I just feel like it's one of those things that until people experience it and see the pleasure in it, do they own it? So how to do that, I am not so sure.
Just keep chipping away one by one?
Well, I think it's a bigger idea than that. But I do think it's a building process, unless there's an event. Now, by event, I don't mean a festival. But trends can happen with events as well. Like there's a movie that's all about this, and people get enthralled by it. You know,
That would be nice. A good.
yeah. I mean, people start going, "Wow, that's cool," and I want to try that. So that's more of a turbocharger idea.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a marketing guy, so I'm thinking of marketing techniques for it.
Or an event that makes gas $10 a gallon, right?
Well, that'll do it right there.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. So I mean, I guess the other thought too is it's not necessarily cool, like a trend thing that people want to do. I'm really not into cool as the reason to do anything. I actually go the other way.
Right.
But it just comes to mind, what is it that attracts people to want to try it and do it more? And I'm just trying to drill into that and see what it is.
So make it cooler. I kind of like that actually, and from a you know, it's cool to have a cool bike, and I think that can be part of it. I think there can also be cool fashion, almost like a bike chic type of fashion. I think is, you know, it's something that I see when I go to Europe. I sort of see that with you know, the clothing that people wear when they ride. And not not racers type of people, but commuters. It's like a cycle chic type of clothing that I think is cooler.
I agree. Like some of the most beautiful women I've seen are riding bikes.
And that doesn't exist here, really.
No. Here it's kind of rock climber dudes. Yeah. It doesn't. You're exactly right. It doesn't exist.
So, it just last question. Who would you like to shout out, or you know, who do you think would be a good interview for Bike Rebellion, or who would you like to just give a little shout out to?
Well, I have a friend of mine who, on the Liberty Community Bike Center, I was working with Richard Opper, who was my partner. He's a former environmental lawyer, really into cycling. As a exercise event, but he also has written books about the history of biking, and it's fiction, but it's all based on his exploration of past. I think it'd be fascinating, and he's thought a lot about its civic role. So Richard Opper is a great guy. I think,
and he was heavy in the Bicycle Coalition, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was on the board of the president for a while.
Yeah.
He's been off on his own for a while, but I think if you called him and mentioned I suggested it, you can meet it. I think it'd be a good interview.
Excellent. We'll look up Richard.
Another one that you might want to think is Kevin Millard, who owns California Bicycle. I don't know if he'd take an interview. He's a busy guy and very focused on his bike shop. But his discussion of safety, I think, could be really interesting.
Okay.
Particularly on that subject and what he's seeing in the industry and what it needs to grow, and what he's trying to do to increase the awareness and training about safety.
Fantastic.
Kevin Millard.
Thank you so much.
And then there's Lorenzo. Do you know Lorenzo?
I don't think so.
Romagnoli.
Don't think so.
He's from Empoli, Italy. He lives here. He's into my world of classic Italian. He rides a lot. He travels and rides. He's a real character. I'd put him third on the list, but Lorenzo would be another guy. I can get you their numbers, all of them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time,
thanks.
Ron.
This is great.
Really appreciate it. And
Sure.
a lot of the things that we went through here today are very useful information, but also just powerful. The history and sort of the status that you sort of are capturing here is.
We think of cycling as new, something that's come around in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Particularly e-bikes and cargo. It seems like we're very much in America about innovation, which is one of our strengths. It's nice to go back, and it adds more gravitas to your interest and your excitement when you know more about it.
Yeah, and innovation doesn't need to be high tech. Like I said before, it's not a linear thing. We can innovate simple still. Just because we're not doing it doesn't mean we can't.
God, don't get me started. There's so many innovations in cycling that have in the past that come out now as being renewals of old ideas. They really are.
Yeah.
And you look through history and biking is, okay, here's another.
Go for it.
I have a book. It's on behind, what's your name?
Coleman.
Behind him, all those photographs are from a book. This is my new project. It's a book from the turn of the century. It's hundreds of photographs in this personal journal of this woman's life. I bring it up because it has no words. It's just photographs, and it's going to be a new show. But her brother is a bicycle maker in the turn of the century in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm not going to bring the book out because it's really delicate. Yeah. There's dozens of shots in there, beautifully dressed, with bicycles that he's putting motors on.
Wow. Because
it was the advent of the motorcycle.
Yeah.
And you can see his excitement and the shop name and these beautifully crafted bikes, 1906, that are becoming motorcycles, that then became cars, that then became airplanes, all in that era.
Yeah.
All coming from what? The bicycle. Tubes, welded tubes, and transportation. I mean, the history of that vehicle is just friggin' phenomenal when you think about it. If you scratch a 747, you get the Wright brothers who were bicycle store owners. It's really cool.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Ron.
Yeah.